It was a rainy Thursday when I first heard the news. The kind of rain that comes down in sheets, soaking the streets and the people who aren't quick enough to seek shelter. But inside, the warmth of my home felt like the world was far from that storm. My life was supposed to be easy now. My husband, Greg, had passed away 2 months ago, and I was adjusting to my new life. Alone, yes, but free. Or so I thought. Before we continue, please write in the comments which state you're listening from. Enjoy the story. I had inherited everything. $50 million. Yes, you heard me right. And it wasn't just any inheritance. It was Greg's real estate empire, built over decades, properties scattered across the best parts of Atlanta, Georgia. I had never once been interested in the business side of things. Greg had always taken care of that. But now it was mine. It was all mine. I moved slowly, adjusting to the solitude. For years I had been the supportive wife, the one who stayed behind, playing the role of homemaker while Greg climbed the corporate ladder. But now, at 48, I was stepping into a life I had never imagined. The power, the wealth, the influence, I was learning to navigate it all. Lydia, my daughter, had just gotten married a month before Greg's passing. A beautiful ceremony, one I could only hope would lead to happiness for her. She had married Michael, a charming young man, successful in his own right, or so it seemed, but I didn't trust him. Something about him never sat right with me, though I could never put my finger on it. Despite my reservations, I kept my secret. The inheritance wasn't something I wanted to share with anyone, especially Lydia. She didn't need to know. She had enough on her plate with the new marriage and trying to build her own life. But as the days went by, things started to feel different, more unsettled. I couldn't shake the feeling that Michael wasn't just in this marriage for love. Every time he came over, he asked too many questions. Questions about Greg's properties, about the family finances. I thought I was imagining things at first, but then came that knock on the door. I was sitting at my kitchen table drinking coffee when I heard the heavy knock echo through the house. I wasn't expecting anyone. As I made my way to the door, I already knew. The tension in the air had been building for days, and now, here it was, Michael, standing on the other side. "Mrs. Carter," he said with that smirk of his eyes scanning the room behind me as if he already owned it. "We need to talk about your husband's estate." I froze. The words hit me like a cold gust of wind. Estate. He knew. He must have found out somehow. The storm that was brewing in my life had just moved from distant thunder to a full-blown hurricane. Before we continue, please write in the comments which state you're listening from. Enjoy the story. It was just the beginning, but I knew one thing for certain. My life was about to change in ways I couldn't yet comprehend. I didn't know how to respond. Michael stood there, eyes unwavering, waiting for me to say something. Anything. His voice was calm, too calm, as if this was all just a formality for him. "I'm sure you're aware that Greg's estate is extensive," he continued, pushing his way past me and into the foyer. "I think it's time we discuss how we're going to handle things now that Greg is gone." I closed the door behind him, my heart pounding. How did he know about the estate? Had Lydia told him? Had he found out through some back channel, or was he simply testing the waters to see how far he could push? "I'm afraid I don't understand what you're asking, Michael," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, though the unease was creeping up my spine. Michael looked around, taking in the lavish surroundings of the house we had built together. I noticed the way his eyes lingered on the paintings, the furniture. He was assessing everything, as if calculating its worth. "I think it's time for a conversation about the assets. You know, the properties Greg acquired over the years. We'll need to talk about the paperwork. There are a few things I need to clarify before we move forward." "Move forward?" I repeated, feeling a chill run through me. "What do you mean?" "I've spoken with my attorney," Michael said smoothly, his voice turning businesslike. "And it seems there are a few discrepancies in the will. It's not that simple, Evelyn. You might not be fully aware of the financial situation. There's a lot to untangle. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. What was he implying? Was this some kind of tactic to pressure me? He couldn't possibly think he had a claim to Greg's estate, could he? But there he was, standing in my home, already talking about legalities, already making it sound like a done deal. I don't know what you're referring to, Michael, I replied, my tone now more defensive. Greg's will was very clear. Everything goes to me. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Maybe it was clear to you, Evelyn, but the law isn't always that simple. We need to have a proper discussion about this. At that moment, I realized that my calm, predictable world was crumbling. Michael's subtle threats, his insinuations, they were no accident. He wasn't just here for a friendly chat. He was testing me, probing for weaknesses. And I could see right through him now. I'll need to speak with my attorney, I said, trying to regain control of the conversation. Michael shrugged. Of course, but I'm sure we'll all find a way to work this out. For Lydia's sake, of course. His words hung in the air as he turned to leave, but I didn't miss the way his gaze lingered for a second too long on the family portrait above the fireplace. It was as if he was claiming ownership of something that wasn't his. I locked the door behind him, my hand shaking slightly as I did. I had no idea what he was planning, but I knew this wasn't the last time I'd be seeing him. It wasn't just about the money, it was about control. And Michael wasn't going to stop until he had it. I needed to think. I needed to act quickly, before things got worse. And I had to keep the secret for as long as I could, at least until I figured out how far Michael was willing to go. The days after Michael's visit felt like a storm was slowly building on the horizon. At first, I tried to push it from my mind. After all, I had my own lawyer, and I had been Greg's trusted partner for over 25 years. Michael could say whatever he wanted. He didn't have a leg to stand on. Or so I thought. But then, Lydia started acting differently. She seemed distant, distracted. The conversations we once had about our family, about Greg, now felt strained. She would look at me with uncertainty in her eyes, as if she was caught between loyalty to her mother and loyalty to her new husband. I didn't want to believe it, but I started to see the cracks. Michael was poisoning her thoughts, no doubt. It wasn't just the money anymore. He was getting inside her head, and I knew I had to act fast before she became an unwitting pawn in his game. One evening, I decided to confront her. We had always been close, but lately she seemed to avoid spending time with me. I needed to know what was going on in her mind, and I wasn't going to let Michael's influence tear us apart. I need to talk to you, Lydia, I said, sitting across from her in the living room. The weight of the conversation felt heavy in the air. Lydia hesitated before responding, her eyes avoiding mine. What's wrong, Mom? I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. It's about Michael. He came to see me the other day. Her expression immediately shifted, an uncomfortable shift that told me everything I needed to know. Mom, she said quietly, I told him I didn't want to get involved. I don't want to argue about this. You don't want to argue about... What? I asked, my voice a little sharper than I intended. Lydia, this is about your future, about the future of this family. Michael's trying to take what's ours, and I won't let him. Lydia's eyes welled up with tears as she looked at me. Mom, I don't know what's going on. I just want everything to be okay. I don't want to fight with you or Michael. I don't want any of this. I felt a surge of anger and helplessness. Michael had already won. He had planted seeds of doubt in Lydia's mind, and I wasn't sure how to uproot them. My daughter, my only child, was caught in the middle, torn between her husband and me. I understand, Lydia, I said, my voice softening. But you need to understand something. Your father built this family, this life, for us. And I won't let anyone tear it down, not even Michael. She nodded, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes that made my heart ache. She wasn't sure anymore. and that hurt more than anything Michael could say. The next few days passed in a blur. Michael started showing up more frequently. He would call me to discuss the estate, but each conversation felt more like a threat than a discussion. Every time we spoke, I could feel him pushing harder, testing my boundaries. I spoke with my lawyer, and we began preparing for a legal battle. The more we looked into the details of Greg's estate, the more I realized how complex things were. There were properties tied to various trusts, offshore accounts, and financial entanglements that even I hadn't fully understood. Michael's claims weren't just baseless. He was using the law to his advantage, and I had to be prepared for the fight of my life. But then, it happened. I received a letter from Michael's attorney. It was official, legally binding, and it demanded that I turn over all documentation of Greg's real estate holdings. He was pushing for a complete reevaluation of the will, questioning the legality of some of Greg's investments. The letter was filled with technical language, making it seem like I had no choice but to comply. I sat there staring at the letter in disbelief. Michael was serious. He was going to take this all the way, but I wasn't about to give up without a fight. I called my lawyer, who assured me that we had options, but I knew deep down that things were escalating. Michael was relentless. He wasn't just trying to claim what was mine. He was trying to break me, to break my family. I wasn't going to let that happen. I needed a plan, a strategy. But more importantly, I needed to get Lydia on my side before it was too late. The clock was ticking, and I was running out of time. The day I received Michael's letter, everything changed. It was as though the air around me thickened, and my vision blurred with panic. For the first time, I understood what it felt like to be powerless. My mind raced as I read the legal jargon, the accusations, the demands for documents I wasn't prepared to provide. How had it come to this? How had Greg's legacy, the very foundation of everything I had built, become the target of this man? Michael wasn't just testing my patience anymore. He was trying to steal everything. I slammed the letter down on the kitchen counter, my hands trembling. My lawyer had assured me that this was nothing more than a legal tactic, nothing that couldn't be handled with time and proper negotiation. But that didn't stop the gnawing fear that settled deep in my stomach. What if Michael had more ammunition? What if he wasn't bluffing? I needed to take control. I couldn't afford to be passive anymore. It wasn't just about the money. It was about my dignity, my family's future. I had spent my entire life supporting Greg, raising Lydia, building a life we were proud of. And now, here was this man, coming into our world and trying to tear it apart for his own gain. I grabbed my phone and dialed Lydia's number. My heart raced as the phone rang. She hadn't returned my calls the last few days. I needed her to understand that this wasn't just about me. This was about protecting everything we had. "Mom, I'm not sure I can talk right now," Lydia's voice sounded strained on the other end. No, Lydia," I interrupted, the urgency in my voice surprising even me. "This can't wait anymore. You need to listen to me, right now." I could hear the hesitation in her voice, but she didn't hang up. That was something. "What's going on?" she asked, her tone flat. "Michael is pushing too hard," I said, my voice breaking. "He's threatening me with legal action, and if you don't help me, he's going to take everything Greg built. He's not doing this for you. He's doing this for himself." There was a long pause. I could almost hear her thinking, weighing what I had just said. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "I don't know what to do, Mom. I'm caught in the middle." "You need to make a choice, Lydia," I said, my voice firm now. "You're either with him or with me. You have to decide what kind of life you want for yourself. This isn't just about the money. This is about your future. If you want to stand by him, you will lose everything. If you stand by me, we can fight this together." Her voice wavered as she responded, "I just want things to be normal again. I want us to be okay." We will be, I said, trying to reassure her. But you have to trust me, sweetheart. I need you to see Michael for what he is. He's manipulating you, and I won't let him destroy this family. I don't know, Mom. Lydia's voice trailed off, and I could hear the sadness and confusion in her words. I'll think about it. Please, I pleaded. Think fast, because the longer you wait, the harder it's going to be. This isn't just a fight over money. This is about keeping our family together. I ended the call, feeling both relieved and frustrated. Lydia wasn't ready to make a decision, and I wasn't sure if she ever would be. But the decision for me was clear. I couldn't wait for her to come around. Michael was making his move, and it was time for me to make mine. I called my lawyer again, my voice steady now. I need a full defense strategy. We're going to fight this, and I'm not going to let Michael get away with this. The battle lines were drawn. I wasn't just going to defend my husband's estate. I was going to fight for my family's future, for Lydia's future, and for my own. This was war, and I wasn't going to lose. The days that followed were a blur of meetings, phone calls, and growing anxiety. I didn't know who I could trust anymore, not even my own daughter. Michael's threats loomed over me, and every time I picked up the phone or opened an email, I braced myself for another blow. But amidst the chaos, something incredible happened, a discovery that would change everything. I had always known that Greg was cautious, meticulous even. He never trusted anyone completely, not even me when it came to the business side of things. He always said, "The world is full of sharks, Evelyn. You never know who's swimming next to you." I always assumed he was speaking figuratively. But now, as I combed through old files and documents he had kept hidden away in a locked drawer in his office, I began to realize the truth. Greg had prepared for this. He had known that something like this might happen. And he had made sure that the resources I needed to protect what was ours were right there, under my nose, all along. I didn't even know where to start. I sifted through folder after folder, each one filled with legal documents, tax records, and obscure investments I had never seen before. Some of them were outdated, but others were still very much alive. One document in particular caught my eye. It was a deed for a property, one I had never heard of, but one that could change everything. It was located in a part of Atlanta I hadn't even known Greg had bought up, a prime piece of real estate that, if sold, could easily cover every cent Michael was trying to claim. It was tucked away in a separate trust, one that I had never been told about. Greg had kept it out of the public eye, hidden away under an alias. The property was worth millions, but the best part? It wasn't listed in the will. Greg had been playing the long game, and now it was my turn. As I dug deeper, I found more. Multiple accounts and properties that Michael would never be able to trace. Greg had used offshore accounts, shell corporations, and even international assets to protect his wealth. At the time, I had never cared to understand the intricacies of it all, but now it was like a treasure trove filled with everything I needed to turn the tide in my favor. I couldn't let Michael know about this just yet. Not until I had a solid plan. Not until I knew exactly what I was up against. The information I had uncovered was my ace in the hole. It was the leverage I needed, and I wasn't going to waste it. I spent the next few days in a haze of paperwork and phone calls. I contacted a trusted financial advisor and asked him to help me map out the best way to move forward. He was shocked when I told him about the assets Greg had kept hidden, but he was also impressed. "Your husband wasn't just cautious, Evelyn. He was brilliant," he said. "This could be enough to secure everything you need to fight Michael." The more I learned about these hidden resources, the more I realized just how underestimated I had been. I wasn't some helpless widow. I was in control of a vast network of wealth, of connections, of assets, and I wasn't going to let some opportunistic man come in and take it all away from me. The moment of doubt, I had been holding on to slowly started to fade away. I wasn't just going to survive this. I was going to win. I called my lawyer and told him to prepare the papers for the next phase of the legal battle. I had the evidence I needed, and I was ready to use it. But I knew the fight would be long, and Michael wasn't going to back down easily. He would be watching every move I made, and I had to be strategic. I looked over the documents one last time, securing them in a safe place. As I did, I couldn't help but smile. Michael might have thought he was the one pulling the strings, but he was about to find out that I had always been the one holding the real power. I just had to make sure. He didn't realize it until it was too late. I knew I couldn't make any rash moves. I couldn't just storm into Michael's life and demand he back off. That would give him the power. No, I needed to outsmart him, and to do that, I had to be patient. For the first time in my life, I was playing a dangerous game of chess, and I wasn't going to make the first move until I had everything perfectly lined up. I sat down with my lawyer, Robert, the man I had trusted for years. He was calm, meticulous, and unlike the others who had only seen the surface of Greg's empire, Robert truly understood the complexity of it all. "We have an advantage, Evelyn," Robert said, flipping through the stack of papers I had brought. "These offshore accounts, these hidden assets, this is a gold mine, but we need to use them wisely. Michael won't back down easily, and he's going to dig deep." "I know," I replied, feeling the weight of the situation. "But it's not just about the money. He's after control. He wants to turn everything upside down, and I won't let him." We went over every document, every clause in the contracts, every property Greg had acquired. Robert was right. Michael's case was flimsy at best. But the problem was, he had time on his side, and so did I. The longer I dragged it out, the more likely he would try to push harder. I needed to strike at the right moment, and I had to make sure that when I did, it would be a blow he couldn't recover from. "I'll set up the meeting," Robert said. "We'll gather all the documents we need, and we'll make it clear that we know everything. That will give us the leverage we need to force a settlement." I nodded, feeling the beginnings of confidence creeping in. Michael wasn't just fighting a widow who had no clue about the family business. He was up against a woman who knew how to fight for what was hers. And I wasn't about to lose this battle. As we finalized the details, my thoughts turned back to Lydia. She had been so distant lately, and though I could sense her hesitation, I knew I had to involve her in this fight. She was my daughter, my flesh and blood. But Michael had already started to manipulate her, and I couldn't let him do that any longer. I called her again that evening, my voice softer this time. "Lydia, we need to talk." "I don't want to argue, Mom," she said, her voice strained. "I'm tired of all the fighting." "I know you are," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "But this isn't just about Michael. This is about us. This is about your future. I need you to understand what's really going on." "Mom, please," she replied, sounding exhausted. "I don't know if I can do this right now." "You don't have to make any decisions right away," I said, my heart breaking. "But you need to know something. Michael is using you. He's trying to take everything we've worked for, everything your father built, and I won't let him do that to you." There was silence on the other end of the line, and I could hear her breathing heavily, clearly torn. "I don't want to choose between you and him," she whispered. "You don't have to choose, Lydia," I said softly. "But you do need to understand that I'm doing this for both of us. I'm doing this to protect you." After a long pause, she finally spoke. "I'll think about it, Mom." "I will." It wasn't the answer I had hoped for, but it was a start. I could feel her slipping away from me, but I wasn't going to give up. I would do whatever it took to pull her back, to show her the truth. Hung up the phone and took a deep breath. I wasn't just planning for Michael's next move. I was planning for Lydia's future, for the future of this family. And I couldn't afford to fail. The meeting with Robert was set for the next day. I had the evidence, I had the strategy, and I was ready to face Michael head-on. This was the turning point. The game was about to change. The day of the meeting arrived faster than I expected, and my nerves were shot. But there was no turning back. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the point where everything I had uncovered would be laid bare. Michael wouldn't know what hit him. Robert and I arrived early at the conference room, the thick glass windows overlooking the city as the backdrop. The room was cold, sterile, a perfect reflection of the business at hand. My fingers tapped nervously on the table as I waited for Michael to walk in, his smug demeanor no doubt ready to take control of the situation. He was late, which only worked in my favor. Every minute that passed gave me more time to settle into the role I had. To play today, calm, collected, in control. I had done the work. Now it was time to execute. Finally, the door swung open and Michael entered. He wasn't alone. Of course, he had brought his lawyer, a sharp-dressed man I didn't recognize, but it didn't matter. I had come prepared. Michael smiled when he saw me, but there was no warmth in it. It was the smile of a man who believed he had already won. He was playing the long game, and I could see that he thought he had me cornered. "Evelyn," Michael said, his voice dripping with fake sweetness. "I'm glad we could finally meet. I trust everything's in order?" I didn't respond immediately, letting the silence hang in the air. I wanted him to sweat, just a little. "I'm sure we'll find out," I said, my voice steady. "Please, sit." He looked at me, his smile faltering for a second before he regained his composure and sat down across from me, his lawyer following suit. The tension was palpable. I could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on us all. This was it. Robert started the conversation, outlining the details of the estate and Michael's request for access to the assets. His lawyer was quick to interrupt, citing technicalities and demanding a full reevaluation of the will. But I wasn't listening to their words anymore. I had already planned my next move. I reached into my bag and pulled out the documents. They weren't just any documents. They were the keys to Greg's hidden empire, the resources he had tucked away to protect me in case something like this happened. "Before we continue," I said, placing the papers on the table in front of Michael and his lawyer, "let's make sure we're all on the same page." Michael's eyes flickered to the documents, but he didn't react. He wasn't worried. Not yet. "These," I continued, "are the documents that prove I have full control over the estate, and I'm well within my rights to make decisions on behalf of Greg's holdings. But you see, there's more to this estate than you're aware of, Michael." I could feel his curiosity rising, but he didn't show it. He wasn't going to give me the satisfaction of showing his hand, but I knew he had to be worried. The truth was, he had no idea what I had discovered. I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a low, confident tone. "Greg didn't just leave you and Lydia some scraps, Michael. He left me something far more valuable, properties you didn't even know existed. I know about the hidden investments, the offshore accounts, the trusts. I know more than you think." For the first time, Michael's smile faltered. It was subtle, but I saw it. The facade was cracking. "This isn't just about money," I said, my voice firm. "This is about power, and I'm not giving that up without a fight. You can't manipulate me into giving up what's mine." His lawyer immediately spoke up, but I wasn't having it. "I'm not interested in your threats," I said, cutting him off. "What you're asking for isn't going to happen. And if you think you can outsmart me, you're gravely mistaken." The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Michael was silent now, processing what I had just laid out for him. I could see the wheels turning in his head. He was calculating, trying to figure out how to get back control of the situation, but it was too late. I had him exactly where I wanted him. Robert made the final move, presenting the rest of the documentation to the table, outlining the legitimacy of Greg's will and the proper distribution of assets. We weren't just fighting for the estate. We were making it clear that Michael had no ground to stand on. "Now," Robert said, as he handed Michael's lawyer the documents, "we expect you to respect Evelyn's rights as the rightful executor of the estate." Michael stared at me. For a moment, his face turning pale. The power had shifted, and he knew it. He wasn't in control anymore. "Consider this a warning," I said, my voice cool. "This is your final opportunity to walk away. You won't get another." With that, I stood up, signaling that the meeting was over. Michael's lawyer hesitated, but eventually stood, his face red with frustration. Michael, for the first time, was speechless. As they left the room, I felt a rush of relief. But I knew this wasn't the end. Michael wouldn't just walk away. He would come back stronger, more desperate. But I was ready for him. I had made my first move. And now, the game was mine to win. I didn't expect Michael to back down so easily. In fact, I didn't expect him to leave the meeting quietly at all. He would come back. He had to. His desperation was too obvious for him to just let go of everything he thought he could control. But what I didn't anticipate was the length he would go to make sure he had the last word. 2 days after the meeting, I received another letter, this time from his lawyer. It was an ultimatum. They were pushing for a court date, demanding a full investigation into Greg's assets, challenging every claim I had made, questioning the legitimacy of the documents I had presented. It was clear to me now. Michael was out for blood. He wasn't just trying to secure a portion of the estate anymore. He was trying to tear it all down. He wanted to humiliate me, to strip me of everything, to prove that no woman, especially not a widow, could hold on to power without being challenged. I met with Robert again the next morning. He looked over the letter, his brow furrowed, and without a word, he tapped his pen against the desk. "He's trying to break you, Evelyn," he said, "but he's not going to succeed." I sat back in my chair, steeling myself. He's underestimated me. He's underestimating all of us. I had known that Michael wasn't just going to roll over, but seeing him go to such extremes only fueled my resolve. He was playing dirty, and I had to be smarter, faster. It was time to go on the offensive. We spent the next few days organizing everything. Every document, every piece of evidence, every legal clause we could find, it was all being prepared for the court. But I wasn't going to let it get that far. I couldn't afford to wait for the court to decide. I needed to finish this before it spiraled even further out of control. I called Lydia again. The strain in my voice was unmistakable, but I knew I had to have her with me on this. She needed to understand what was really at stake. "Lydia, I need you to listen," I said as soon as she answered. "Michael is pushing too far. He's forcing us into a corner, and I don't know how much longer we can avoid a legal fight." "I know, Mom," she said, her voice thick with uncertainty. "But what do you want me to do?" "Michael is using you as leverage, Lydia. I need you to see that. I need you to make a choice. I'm not asking you to fight for me, but I am asking you to stand with the truth. Don't let him manipulate you." There was silence on the other end of the line before she responded. "I don't know if I can, Mom. I'm so torn." My heart ached for her, but I couldn't afford to be soft anymore. "I know this isn't easy, but this is about more than just money. This is about protecting everything your father worked for, everything he built for us." "I'll think about it," she said quietly. And I knew deep down that she wasn't sure. But I couldn't give up on her. I couldn't give up on us. The next day, I finally got the call I'd been waiting for. Michael had requested a meeting. But this time, it wasn't just about the estate. It was about power. He wanted to meet face to face, to finally settle this once and for all. I knew this was it. The moment he would either back down or escalate everything. It would be a fight to the finish. The meeting was set for the following evening. I walked into the conference room, my heart racing. This wasn't just about proving I was right anymore. This was about ending it. This was the point of no return. When Michael walked in, his posture was more rigid, more guarded than I'd ever seen him. His lawyer was with him, but it was clear that Michael was the one calling the shots now. He didn't waste any time. "Evelyn," he began, his voice sharp, "this has gone far enough. I'm giving you one last chance to settle this before we take it to court. I suggest you think carefully." I met his gaze, my own eyes steady and unflinching. "You're the one who's gone too far, Michael. This isn't about a settlement. Anymore. You've crossed a line, and I'm not backing down." Michael's jaw tightened, and for a moment I thought he might actually lose his cool, but he didn't. He was calculating, thinking through his next move. "I'm not here to argue anymore, Evelyn," he said, his voice cold. "I'm here to claim what's mine." I leaned forward slightly, my voice dropping. "No, Michael. This is my fight now, and I won't lose." The room went silent for a few tense moments. I could see the wheels turning in his head as he processed the shift. He wasn't expecting me to fight back so fiercely. He thought he could push me, break me, but now he was the one backing down. "I'm not asking for your permission anymore," he said, standing up and motioning to his lawyer. "This isn't over." "I'll see you in court," I said, rising to my feet, my voice sharp and final. "But know this, no matter what you do, you won't win." With that, I walked out of the room, feeling a rush of relief wash over me. Michael wasn't going to give up, but neither was I. The battle was just beginning, but I had made it clear that I wasn't going down without a fight. The court battle wasn't what I had expected. It was brutal, relentless. Every move Michael made was calculated to exhaust me, to make me doubt myself. His lawyer was sharp, using every loophole, every possible angle to twist the facts. It felt like we were stuck in a maze and the walls were closing in. But I had something Michael didn't: patience and the truth. As the weeks dragged on, the legal team I had assembled, experts in estates and trusts, worked tirelessly to ensure every asset Greg had left was accounted for. We dug deeper into the family's financial records, untangling webs of hidden accounts, investments, and properties that no one had seen coming. The documents that Michael had so arrogantly dismissed became the foundation of my defense. And then came the moment of reckoning. During one of the final hearings, when Michael's team tried to challenge the legitimacy of Greg's will, Robert, my lawyer, pulled out the final piece of the puzzle. It was the deed to the property in downtown Atlanta that Michael didn't even know existed. It was hidden in an unassuming trust, but when presented, it was undeniable. The property alone was worth more than Michael had ever imagined. "That's not possible," Michael's lawyer said, his voice wavering as he looked at the documents laid out on the table. "Where did this come from?" "It came from my husband's careful planning," I said, my voice firm, every inch of the power I had rediscovered coming to the forefront. "And it's mine to control now." The courtroom was silent for a long moment, and I could feel the weight of the evidence sinking in. Michael's smug expression had faltered, his eyes darting between the documents and me, trying to make sense of the shift. He had underestimated me, just as I had hoped. "We've gathered all the necessary information to prove my client's case," Robert said, his tone unwavering. "This estate is legally hers, and it was Greg's will that it remain in her hands." Michael didn't say a word. His lawyer shuffled papers nervously, clearly running out of options. The room was electric with the realization that the tide had turned. The battle was over, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. It wasn't about the money anymore. It wasn't about Greg's legacy. It was about proving that I wasn't going to let anyone take what was mine. I had fought for it, and I had won. The judge banged his gavel, bringing the session to a close. "The ruling is final," he declared. "The estate will remain under the control of Mrs. Carter." I didn't even flinch. I knew it was coming. Michael's face drained of color as he stood up, defeated. He was a man who thought he could control everything, but he had learned the hard way that some things were beyond his grasp. As I left the courtroom, I could feel the weight of the years of struggle finally lifting from my shoulders. I had done it. I had kept the family legacy intact. But more than that, I had reclaimed my own strength. That evening, I sat alone in the house that Greg and I had built, looking out over the city. Lydia hadn't come to the court hearing. She hadn't been ready. But I knew she was watching from a distance, waiting for the right time to come back into my life. I had always been the one to support her, to guide her, but now I realized it was time for her to see me as something more than just her mother. It was time for her to see me as a woman who could stand on her own, who could fight, who could win. The phone rang. I didn't need to look at the caller ID to know who it was. "Mom," Lydia's voice came through, tentative but strong. "I'm proud of you. I'm sorry I didn't understand sooner." "Lydia," I said, my voice softening, "I never wanted you to be caught in the middle, but I hope now you can see why I had to do this." "I do," she said quietly. "I was scared, but I see it now. You were right. I've been blind." "It's okay," I said, feeling a weight lift from my chest. "We're going to be okay." And with that, I knew we were. We had survived. We had emerged stronger. The world was mine to control now, and I was ready for whatever came next. The weeks following the court ruling felt like a new chapter, though one that was still being written. The tension I had lived with for so long started to ease, but there were moments when I found myself looking over my shoulder, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Michael hadn't gone quietly. He was still out there, somewhere, plotting his next move. But in that moment, I realized something important. I wasn't afraid anymore. It had taken me far too long to understand that. For years, I had been hiding, behind the protection of Greg's success, living in the shadow of his accomplishments. But now, I was stepping into the light. The estate, the legacy, and most importantly, my own future, were in my hands. I had always been the supportive wife, the mother who put her daughter's needs first. I had never fully embraced my own power, always thinking it was something that belonged to someone else, to Greg, or even to Michael. But through all of this, I had learned a vital lesson. My strength had always been within me. I had just needed to claim it. I spent days walking through the halls of the house, remembering the life Greg and I had built together. It was a strange feeling, bittersweet and yet peaceful. There were memories of love, of laughter, and even of the hardships we'd overcome. But there were also those lingering moments of doubt I had carried with me all these years. Those moments when I doubted my own worth, my own abilities. As I walked through the rooms, I let those doubts go. The house was still a home, but now it was mine. I had earned that right, and I wasn't going to let anyone take it from me. The phone call from Lydia came just a few days later. I had been expecting it, though I didn't know exactly when it would come. Her voice was softer this time, more assured. "Mom," she began, "I've been thinking a lot about everything that happened. I've been looking at things differently." I smiled to myself, relieved. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "I see now how strong you are," she said. "I see it now more than ever. I'm sorry for not understanding before." "I understand, Lydia," I said, my voice full of love. "You were caught in the middle, but you've always been strong too. You just didn't know it yet." "I want to help," she said. "I want to be there for you. I've been thinking about it, and I want to do things differently. I want to learn from you." My heart swelled with pride. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment when Lydia would finally see me as more than just her mother, as a woman who had fought for everything she had, and who would continue to fight for what was right. "We'll learn together," I said. "This isn't just about what happened with Michael. It's about who we become after all of this. It's about reclaiming what's ours, what we've always deserved. That conversation marked a turning point in our relationship. The distance that had once separated us began to fade, and I could feel the bond between us strengthening again. Michael had tried to tear us apart, but instead he had only brought us closer. Together, we could rebuild. Together, we could face whatever came next. As the days passed, I started to take a more active role in managing Greg's estate. I met with architects, designers, and real estate agents, using the wealth that was rightfully mine to revitalize the properties that had been left in Greg's care. The real estate empire Greg had built was now a legacy I would continue to nurture, not just for myself, but for Lydia as well. I began to see a future beyond the legal battles, beyond the shadows of doubt that had once clouded my vision. The money and the properties were important, yes, but they were nothing without the strength I had discovered within myself. The most valuable thing I had was the ability to stand up for what was mine, to take control of my own destiny. Lydia and I spent more time together, working side by side on the family business, learning from each other. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about the pride we shared, the bond that was being rebuilt. I had always thought I was alone in this fight, but I wasn't. I had my daughter, and together we would move forward, stronger than before, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free. It had been 6 months since the court battle had ended. The dust had settled, and what once felt like a dark cloud looming over me was now a distant memory. The estate was mine, and more importantly, my relationship with Lydia had finally healed. We were both standing on our own feet, not as two women, battling against the world, but as two women who had found strength in each other. The properties Greg had left behind were flourishing again. I had made the decisions I needed to make, revitalizing the legacy he had built. The empire was no longer just a monument to his success. It was a testament to my resilience, to the foundation I had laid for Lydia's future. The world saw me as just a widow who inherited a fortune. But what they didn't know was that I had been the one behind the scenes, the one pulling the strings. And now, the world was starting to see me as I truly was, strong, capable, and in control. I spent a quiet evening in my study, reviewing plans for new developments. The phone rang, and I picked it up without thinking. It was Lydia. "Mom, I've been talking to some investors," she said, her voice full of excitement. "We've got a few big opportunities coming up. I think it's time we expand. Together." A smile spread across my face. "Together, huh?" "Yeah," she said confidently. "I'm ready, and I think we've got something special here. It's our turn now." I leaned back in my chair, looking out the window at the city lights. For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. It wasn't just about business or money anymore. It was about building something that would last, something that would empower not just me, but also Lydia, and perhaps even future generations. We had the power to shape our own destinies. "Let's do it, Lydia," I said, my voice steady. "Let's take it to the next level." And just like that, I realized the truth. The battle wasn't over. It was only the beginning. The challenges I faced had made me stronger. They had made me into someone who no longer had to rely on anyone else. I was ready for whatever came next, whether it was more obstacles or more triumphs. This was just the start of a new chapter. We had our future ahead of us, and the world was ours to shape. The end.